One cheeky question that I was asked is how to convince people to stop separating themselves through religious beliefs or beliefs of any other kind. But unfortunately, religion seems to be a very great deterrent against unity, communion, and the such. Well, within many people, not necessarily everywhere across the globe. Well, thinking a bit about the question, I couldn't provide much of a direct answer because I told them first and foremost, see, not everyone is ready to move outside of this kind of separation because this separation stems from not only this lifetime but mainly from this one, but also from previous lifetimes in which that individual has been forced to live in separation. Yes, when you've got bad parenting, when you have miserable people who always overjudge, over criticize, you're never good enough and this and that, we end up thinking that um, nothing is worthy for you. Yes, you are not worth anything. So in the end, the whole life is just a strive to exist. And then you end up wondering why everyone seems to be so happy, so fulfilled with their own life. Well, that is because they have embraced the misery that they have as their own comfort zone. So when you are surrounded by people who live in a different way, but still have a very toxic influence on you, it will sooner or later end up as a perception being imposed upon you. And that perception will be a constant war of us versus them. You're gonna always feel like the odd one out, irrespective of what environment you end up in. And you're gonna simply feel as if you are competing already for other people's attention, for other people's approval. And then if this family encounter, like toxic family, toxic parenting wasn't enough, this can actually go on pretty hard at school. Because at school, you might actually end up with other such children, yes, other products of toxic environments. So you might actually end up in a competition without even wanting, yes, with other children, just because they have somewhat of a similar appreciation towards life. Because you see, psychology and psychiatry are very fixed sciences, but they have thousands upon thousands of variables that one has to take into account. If you have mastery over those variables, reading someone's behavior or even predicting that is not going to be too hard. Obviously, each and every individual will not necessarily go down a specific path, but knowing those parameters can help you immensely by thinning down the possibilities. Yes? Now, this inquires being both a sensitive person, open to your emotions, to your own pains, and having a broad database of possible pains that people can go through, as well as, well, very good people reading capabilities or being probably a little profiler. Yes? And you can combine these and you can feel certain outcomes that some people may go through. At school, you're gonna still be in this same toxic environment where you're gonna compete with other children for marks. Yes, for the so-called appreciation of a teacher who can't care two hoots on you in many situations. Yes, and literally the whole society, any sex society, is designed to strip you of anything that makes you something that you are. Whether you are a dog, whether you are a human, whether you are anything, misery functions in the same way. Yes, misery means running away from what you are and forcing others to follow suit. Yes, and it always culminates with something similar to communism, which is the most aggressive form of annihilating anything that would represent you as what you should be. Yes, it is what I call the hypoboly. Yes, well, it's a pun, it's a personal term for hyperbole. Yes, it is like those things where everything has to go to shit before they can simply spring them into a journey towards a peak experience, right? You have to suffer a lot in order to break from certain patterns, and you launch yourself towards a new version of yourself which will reach a certain peak. Then you start feeling confused yet again, and then everything descends and plunges into chaos. Yes, these slingshots are what you can call your little awakenings. Yes, if you want to perceive humanity in a certain unique way, you have to understand that every race that exists on this planet, on this cosmos, actually, you can look at them as being one single individual. Yes, they are not a hive mind. Yes, hive minds and Gestalt consciousnesses do exist within this cosmos. Yes, but you have to comprehend one thing. Let's take us humans as well. Yes, as a best example. Think of all of us humans as being part of an organism that, let's say, is a bigger human. It's a bigger human, like, let's say, a spirit. Yes, a big human spirit. Yes, not God. A big human spirit. Yes. Within this human spirit, all of us are connections. Yes. It's like each and every human on this planet is like a cell of that spirit. Yes, and that spirit is, well, let's say, has all these individuals on the planet. Yes, all of us as humans are like cells within that body. And that body, that big human spirit, yes, call it our collective consciousness, yes, every new race that exists creates something like that for itself. And that houses a tremendous amount of unconscious behaviors and, well, let's say the code needed, yes, for it to function. And unconsciousness, or let's say the unconscious awareness, yes, the coding of this cosmos is so vast no mind can easily comprehend it. Imagine that if a certain race suffers tremendously when, let's say, after World War II, yes, many countries had a very huge lack of men because of the wars, and people died, and usually men are the first killed within any invasion or any conquest of a city or things like that. And after the World War, there was a huge lack of men. But if you look at how things changed throughout the times, miraculously, a big majority of the children that were born were usually boys. Yes? And somehow nature always found a means and a way and a set of ways to bring back a certain balance. Yes? Because you may not be fully aware of the pains and of the sufferings and the lacks that exist in there. But that big organism that represents all of us does. Within there, if you can tap into it, you can call it part of the Akashic records of the planet if you want. It has multiple names, but this is more like a chapter of the Akashic records. Yes? Within there are the accomplishments, the misaccomplishments, the sorrows of each and every individual that have existed on this planet. That is one of the reasons why, for example, when corporatism appeared in America, everyone was proud of it, was looking at it as if it was the alpha and omega. But in the end, corporatism was designed as a tool, as a prison in which you'd be ritualistically shit on each and every day. The newer generations, when you look at them, they were way more knowledgeable of this, at least slightly. And in time, many people simply shun away, and by design, they hate corporate work, even if they don't know necessarily about it because they've never had experience in it, but they carry the experience of their ancestors. Even if their parents and grandparents never worked within a, you know, such a thing, yes, in a corporation. But they still don't like it. Look nowadays at the newest generations. Yes, they are very lazy because they have been born with technology and everything, you know, given to them, while the previous generations had to struggle for all things. I remember when I was a child, there was no internet, and I had to go to libraries to lend books and to read those to actually find information should I needed to write some more complex compositions. Now you can easily use the AI to provide you with all the necessary information that you need. All you need to do is to simply write the composition based on that, right? But sometimes people don't even bother to do that. They just copy paste what they get. This is very toxic in a way because it teaches you to be very superfluous, yes, to be very superficial. And this will cost you immensely throughout your life. But in the end, everyone has to learn their own things. So when you look at that part, you know, even science fails horribly at this, as it cannot simply easily admit to such things. Yes, these new generations are hateful of corporate work mainly because there are so many generations prior to them that actually have experienced all the pains that they need, and they have those pains unconsciously. While they have not worked one day in the corporate world, obviously they will despise it because there is enough pain already within our, let's say, humanity's consciousness regarding the abuses that can go on into those. And those include everything, like, women, for example, being disadvantaged at times. Yes, because we have to take this into account. Not all corporations will disadvantage women, but it's not the corporation that does that. It's just stupid people who are simply who are simply spiteful. Yes, who are simply hateful. And at times it can be even women that will not want other women to have a better salary, for example. Yes, because typically, when men get pissed, when men become toxic, they tend to manifest that toxicity against others. Women have a tendency, first and foremost, to address that toxicity on them. They usually end up saying a lot more that they are the main fault. Yes, before they start inviting others into their own life and, make their lives miserable as well. Yes. And the very simple point in life is this has to be understood immensely. This has to be taught in school that such a dimension of ourselves exists that houses all the things that have been thought towards, have been thought throughout the ages. Yes, such a manifestation is very powerful. It is very important to know of because if you can tap into Akashic records specifically, you can feel whatever any human has felt throughout this history of us. But be warned, you're not gonna feel that as a movie. You're not gonna feel that as something that you're gonna read about. You're gonna feel those with the same exact intensity that that the specific individual or individuals that you're looking for have thought about. So make sure you have a very solid psychic foundation, because if you were probably curious how people felt throughout the plague, you're probably never gonna have experienced greater fear than something like that. Because a lot of things can make you afraid nowadays, yes, but something that can kill you slowly and surely will always create more fear than the idea or the possibility of being shot at, because usually that can bring a quick death. But if you imagine seeing people back in the times and the fear that they had of vampires, or the fear that they had of demons, or the fear that they had of diseases, or the fear of death that they had, or especially the worst one of all, the fear of God. If you tap into that awareness level, yes, the big human spirit, as I call it, for people to comprehend easier, you will see that the greatest fear we have designed us as humans is the fear of the so-called God of love. Yes, that is the greatest, most crippling fear that humans have felt throughout the last thousands of years. And I'm asking you not to believe me on that and do your own research and see for yourself, because I can't care whether people trust me or not. I actually want people not to trust me and to test things on their own. Because most of the things I'm telling are experiences of my own. Some I have taken from others and more or less experienced a bit myself, but this channel is just for sharing wisdom and experience. But if people haven't experienced something, they will simply shun it away. Yes? So when you start seeing things like that, that technically every human being, each and every one of us, is like a thought in that body's experience. Yes? No wonder why we are so interconnected. No wonder why, see, if everyone is blissed on this planet and there's one simple place that's suffering, yes, it will influence each and every human alive, whether they're a child, whether they're old, whether they're wise, whether they're ignorant. Yes, the more ignorant, the more open they are to that. But also, in many cases, you will not feel that pain specifically, but it will tire you away. If only one place in the world were suffering, you would probably get tired like 5% faster. It would barely be noticeable, especially if you'd be, living a good life with a good salary. You wouldn't have the fear of tomorrow. You wouldn't have to worry about any tax, anything. You could simply also travel and do your own little business, get even more money and things like that. Yes? But now add wars here, war there, strife, people hating one another. Obviously, you're gonna constantly feel troubled. You're constantly gonna have thoughts going through your mind, that thoughts that never belong to you. Yes? Like certain fears of things you've never experienced before. Because, those thoughts exist within that human body, that big spirit, yes, that big human spirit. And then, you can get connected without wanting. You can get connected through those. Yes, those thoughts go through all of us because we are all like cells of that body. Yes, imagine all the thoughts in your mind like being little yous. Yes, they're the same as you. It's just that they look a bit differently, yes, just like we all humans are. When you look at 1,000 humans, they're technically the same. Yes, they have somewhat the same DNA, they have the same features, they have a body height, they have the same skin, Color is different based on geography. We don't care much about that. Some will be taller, some will be shorter, but they will be distinguishably easily as humans. Yes, it doesn't matter whether some will be more thick skulled, some will be more oval faced, or things like that. They will still be human in the end. It is only the mind's obsession to classify. And, remember when I told you about people who think that they're not worthy of anything? Well, this has been one of the biggest karmas of us as humans throughout the times. So it is not surprising that there are so many people, even pseudoscientists, that ended up designing all sorts of these separations. Because, as I said, the more you live in this idea of separation, the more you live in this idea of not being worthy of anything, well, the first step of suffering will be this idea, this war, this belief of us versus them. Yes? So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. I don't want to make it any way longer. Take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferenc Board signing out.